Hey folks, Ricky the War Champion is back in the building, and today I wanted to put the joystick down and just do basically an analysis breakdown on the advanced towers in Kingdom Rush Frontiers. I did one for the original Kingdom Rush, so I wanted to felt compelled to want to do one for the Frontiers game. It's just to basically just be an informative video on the towers, just to break down their stats and when they're all useful in certain situations. So let's see what we have to talk about today, folks. All right, so the first tower we're going to talk about is the tribal axe throwers. The costs, they cost 230, attack damage 30 to 47. That's with the focus, aim, and accuracy upgrade included. Attack rate is average at point. They attack every 0.8 of a second. Attack radius is great with a scope of 414 units. And that's including the steady aim and accuracy upgrade. Without those upgrades, the scope will be considered average. It would be only 358 for the scope. And then the usage frequency, for me personally, I rarely use this tower. And Kingdom, in Frontiers, I feel like compared to the original, why most people probably find the original harder than Frontiers, I feel like in the Kingdom Rush Frontiers, the game is sort of, the producers kind of give you a lot of treats in this game. You know what I mean? Like in the game, like several stages and even the elite stages, you get those auxiliary towers, like for Port Tortuga, for instance, you get the barracks, the pirate barracks, the pirate gunner towers, archer tower. You also get a lot of, I feel like you also get you have a lot of the auxiliary hero, a secondary hero to play with, especially on the other elite stages. And then in general, I feel like they give you a lot of bounty. They give you quite a bit of bounty to start off with, to where you can get. And in this game, I feel like the towers, once you get, they have a lot of good towers in this game that you could use that and get away with to beating certain stages without the usage of this tower. So like the Battle Maker, Crossbow 4, Archmages, Necromancer, you have so many towers at your expense to use instead of this tribal axe thrower tower. So for me and based on how I play, I kind of don't use this tower that often because of the amount of bounty you're blessed with in order to set up other powerful towers, plus the auxiliary towers and secondary hero you can use. So yeah, that's that. Here are the stats, the pros and the cons for the tower that I put together. So to start things off with the pros, it deals 36 to 56 damage per second. So basically the 0.8 of a second it'll do 30 to 47, but over a period of 1 second is 36 to 56, which is equivalent to the Crossbow Fort. That's with the focus, aim, and accuracy upgrade included. With this special skills purchase, it shines really well when it's near a choke point. So if it's like near, maybe you're playing the stage, Snapvine Bridge, and you got a barrack near where that scum bar area is at, you put let's say you put the tribal axe thrower with its abilities. It really works very well, which gets me to my next point. It possesses the capability of weakening enemies when you have the totem of weakness upgraded. Enemies within the range, they receive 40% extra damage, and their melee attack is cut in half. Also, the cooldown is 10 seconds, so that's a very short time for that totem of weakness. It can come out there and it'll be active really quickly. It also possesses the capability of silencing spellcasters' special abilities with the totem of spirits. So that means enemies, they with certain special skills, let's say a blood trickster, for instance, if they're within range of the totem of spirits, they cannot revive dead savage brethren into savage zombies, or maybe night skill happens to walk in range of that totem of spirits. Its ability to cloak and turn invisible is canceled out. And that has an 8-second cooldown. Also, with both of its abilities maxed out, the good thing about this tower is that their skills are practically always active when you have them both maxed out. Like the totem of weakness stays in effect for 9 seconds, but it has a 10-second cooldown. So there's only a 1 second duration where that totem is not active. And then the totem of spirit stays in effect for 8 seconds and has an exactly 8-second cooldown. So it's practically always active if you were to max that out. The cons on the drawbacks, to me, in my opinion, for the tribal axe thrower is that the attack range is shorter compared to the Crossbow Fort. Feel like It's not really that big of a deal, but it does matter, especially when you want to hit enemies further away outside of that happen to be far out of range. The crossbow would be the better choice. It attacks slower than the crossbow fort. That kind of matters, in my opinion. You know, the crossbow fort having that fast rate of fire. I kind of prefer that over the tribal axe thrower, as you can attack enemies more swiftly. So that's a pro for the crossbow fort over the tribal axe thrower. And then the other con, in my opinion, is with the tower. With this tribal axe thrower tower, it's primarily kind of serves as a supportive role type of tower, where it forces you to have to use units to contain enemies within range of the tower itself to optimize its functionality. So like you have to use, that's why you have to accompany it with barracks or reinforcements, or a hero or a necromancer tower with the death rider to keep enemies within range of the totem, specifically the totem of weakness, totem of spirits, in order for it to be effective. So that's something to always keep in mind when for this particular tower. There could be other cons, but that's the best. Those are the cons I came up with. So let's see some clips of it in action. So we're at Dust Chateau. These are the Phantom Warriors. The totem, you'll see how the totems work. They receive extra damage with that orange totem of weakness, and then the totem of spirits cancels out the death aura that the Phantom Warriors give off. It does no damage. All right, so that was a pretty good example there to show you there. It was much easier to kill off those Phantom Warriors with those two totems in action. Moving right along, next tower is the Knights Templar. Cost 230. The attack damage they deal is 20 to 30. The attack rate is they attack every 2.43 seconds. Their hit points 275. That's with the boot camp upgrade included. The hit point regeneration, they regenerate 30 hit points per second while idle. That's with it's less if you do not have that sprint dead corpse upgrade included. Their respawn rate is every 13 seconds, and that's with the veteran squad upgrade. Their armor is medium, but it's 40% armor if they do not have the defense stance and veteran squad upgrade, but it's 60% when you have those upgrades included. This tower, I will say if I played normally, I would rarely use this tower. Even if I had a barracks only showcase, I would rarely use the tower. It just depends on the stage, but I really don't feel like there's much need for the tower, except if, like, in certain situations, maybe there's a strong enemy that maybe, like, in case like on the stage where the Gorillion appears, where that's the only enemy that does physical area attack. That's when these Templars would be really useful, because they have armor and they can withstand the punishment of the physical area attack. I would use assassins more often, but in that case, I would use the Templars for the durability purpose. Also, it's just you know, you can actually play really well without this tower. Honestly, it's just meant for, they just serve the purpose for just strong defense, and also just for you can exploit their ability to revive and stay around long enough. But in this game, the towers are so good in this game that you wouldn't even need to exploit that special ability, even if you had wanted to. So it's to me, I kind of feel like this. I do use it a little bit more than the tribal axe thrower tower, but I don't really use them that often, honestly. Besides, their attack rate is really slow, and on some stages, they're really just not effective. They're not the wisest choice to go with on some stages, as I'll soon discuss further moving forward. So here are the pros and the cons for this tower I came up with. The pros: it deals the highest attack damage of all barracks at 20 to 30. Possesses much more hit points than the assassins at 275. That's with the boot camp upgrading included. That's the most durable of all barracks with 60% armor. A knight's hit points can be as high as 425 hit points with the toughness upgrade. That's a very a commendable ability that you can have upgraded with it. That's almost like a hero hit points for some heroes. That's even more than some of the heroes' hit points. Each knight can perform a bleeding strike with their swords. Now the arterial strike upgrade must be purchased. That's pretty pleasing too, to have the enemies bleeding and losing more hit points as they over a certain time. With the Holy Grail upgrade, this is the only tower with units, in fact, in the entire game, that can potentially revive themselves, as there's no other unit that can do that except for them. So that you can exploit their ability to stay around longer. And they're more, in some cases, they're more reliable than the assassins against enemies that deal area attack and stalling ranged enemies for a period of time. Like, for instance, Gorillans area attack or stalling Pukai riders. As you'll soon see in the clip, you can probably exploit their Holy Grail upgrade to stay alive when the Pukai riders attack, as they deal massive range damage. The cons with them that it came up was that they have a slow attack rate of all the barracks, which is extremely slow at 2.43 seconds. I dare say that's the slowest attack rate of all barracks in the entire series, although I've yet to experience that in Vengeance, but that's just not fast attacking. They have the longest respawn rate of all barracks at 13 seconds. That's with the veteran squad upgrade included, so that's a problem, because if they die off, you have to wait. That's valuable time that you have to wait compared to the assassins that only have an 8-second respawn rate. They regenerate much less hit points compared to the assassins while idle, 30 hit points versus 48. They deal much less attack damage over time compared to the assassins. So the assassins deal 10 to 14 attack damage versus, but that's per second. These, if you multiply that over let's say 2.5 seconds, which is roughly around the time it takes for the Templars to land an attack, that's the assassins are doing over 2.5 seconds, 25 to roughly 42. So that's much more than the Templars. Due to their inability to dodge assaults, they can be a poor choice of a tower to use on certain stages. Definitely true. Greenfin, the beach stages, it's not the wisest choice to use them, because of the fact they can get trapped in the nets, and because they have a slow attack rate. Once they get released from the nets, they probably only get like one attack on the Greenfins and Devil Ties. Thus, those enemies will be still loitering around the battlefield. Also, in the stages where the presence of the Lycans appear, just like in the original Kingdom Rush, it's not the wisest thing to use Paladins against Lycan, because of the fact that they can shift them into Lycans. At least with the Assassins, they can dodge the attack from the Lycans, and thus dodging the potential of being shifted into a werewolf. Artillery strike and revival capability are chance based, so it's only a 10% chance that the Templars will land an artillery strike, and it's a 40% chance at max for them to revive themselves, which is still pretty high, but then again, the point is it's chance based. Much more expensive to max out each of their abilities compared to the assassins, and in some cases they may not be as reliable as assassins for dealing with range enemies, and this is just in some cases. Maybe it's more strategic for you to rally them to cut off range enemies, whereas assassins will just intercept them as they while they remain idle, they're invisible. So the enemies, they'll have to walk up to the range enemies will still keep walking, and the assassin will intercept them and thus cutting them off. Whereas with the Templars, you have to micromanage them to actually cut them off, as they can be seen by ranged units. So this is overall the pros and the cons. Maybe you have more. I'd like to see it in the comment section, but that's the ones I came up with. Let's see some clips of them in action. So here's a good example. Yeah, that's their Holy Grail. So you got a bunch of these Pukai riders. You can stall the Pukai riders pretty well, but then again, it's chance. It's a 40% chance base when that Holy Grail's maxed out. Yep. So that's that for that. That was just a clip to show them their durability there as well. Moving right along, the next tower I have on the list is the Archmage, which costs 300 attack damage. 66 to 132. That's with the Eldritch Power upgrade included. It's only 60 to 120 if that's excluded. Attack rate is slow. They attack every 1.5 seconds. Their attack radius is great with a scope of 436. The Rune of Power upgrade is included in that. Otherwise, it'd be 396 for the scope if that was excluded. Usage frequency, I would say it's not often. I don't use this tower that often, honestly. There are some cases and scenarios where I would use them mainly for the purpose of trying to just whittle down the hit points of certain enemies, and at times I might exploit it to for the purpose of trying to crowd control because of the capability of using that twister. But overall, I don't use it that often, but I do use it more than the Templars and the tribal axe throwers for sure. So let's get into the pros and cons. Pros. They deal the highest damage of all towers at 66 to 132. When idle long enough, they can store up their power to potentially deal double or triple damage. So that's when they store the bolts. They gradually over time, accumulate 2 bolts, and then they can accumulate 3 bolts to do double or triple damage. Their twister ability enhances that twister ability upgrade that you can have. It enhances the tower's crowd controlling capability, and meanwhile hurts and carries enemies back several nodes along the path that they traveled. The twister ability can also be seen as essential in some situations, as enemies that are caught up in it, they're out of play for a while, and basically what that does, it buys a player valuable time to make defensive adjustments. I really like that about it, because it's different than the arcane wizards. When the arcane wizard teleports, it teleports them back immediately, and then the enemies are in play. But that tower will actually buy you, when they get caught up in that twister, that's several seconds that they're caught in that twister, where you can make some adjustments or rally something to prepare for the enemies that get cluttered up and that get out of the twister once after being cluttered up. Critical mass ability can potentially deal small area magic damage, which is pretty pleasing. The brilliance upgrade, which applies to all mage towers, can make the archmage extremely powerful. That's if you have 9 mage towers built, then the tower can have a maximum of up to 86 to 172 magic damage. So that's a 20 to 40 magic damage attack jump up from 66 to 132 if you had 9 mage towers built with that brilliance upgrade included. And it has a much higher variance damage compared to the Necromancer tower. So what I mean by that is the fact that it does 66 to 132. That's much greater than the 22 to 77 that the Necromancer tower does. The cons, however, on the contrary, is that they have a slower attack rate compared to the Necromancer tower. So in some cases that could be bad, because if there's an enemy that you need to attack quickly before it may be escaping the battlefield, and if the Necromancer tower, which has a faster attack rate, can actually let off its attack sooner, that can kill the enemy before it escapes. In some cases, that's more desirable in certain situations. Though it has decent crowd control capability, Necromancers tend to be a better choice, slowing and stalling enemies significantly, especially fast-moving enemies. So, let's say there's a fast-moving Greenfin, for instance. The Necromancer tower might be a better choice, especially for holding hordes of even some durable enemies, even fast-moving enemies. They tend to be better, in my opinion. I feel like that's opinionated, but yeah. Critical mass ability has a 35% chance of activating. So even if you do buy it, which costs 180 after you have a specific after you have an upgrade, the star upgrade, the critical mass has only a 35% chance of activating, which isn't that high, but I mean, it's still, the point is it's chance based. Twister ability can backfire by clumping together hordes of enemies that could potentially overwhelm one's defense at a choke point. Definitely true. Especially, let's say there's a stage where there's like the beach stages, for instance, where you get all those hordes of Greenfins. Since they're fast moving and you happen to teleport them back, or you have the twister that sends them back, if they clutter up, they happen to clutter up at a bad spot where hordes of other enemies appear, you could easily get overwhelmed, as you might not have towers that are specifically set up to deal with decimating hordes of enemies like an artillery tower, so you could get overwhelmed pretty easily. The Twister ability is expensive at 315 bounty upon initial purchase. So that's the other thing, for it to be a good, I feel to be a much better crowd controlling, to be overall much better crowd controlling tower. That Twister ability is pleasing, but it costs quite a bit upon initial purchase. Afterwards, it only costs 225, but it's still pretty expensive. So those are the pros and cons for it. So let's see Let's see a clip of it. So this is a very good example here. This we have in presence two battle makers, which are slowing down units. This is where this is where the Twister is very useful, when especially you have slow moving enemies, and then you have them. You also you stall them really well. That tower it shows you exactly why it's a very good at crowd controlling with that Twister, and then also the massive damage it deals. So that was that. Moving right along, the next is the Dwarf Tower, which costs 400. It's attack damage 28 to 50. That's with improved ordnance upgrade. Attack rate is very slow. They attack every 3 seconds. Attack radius is long with a 360 scope. That's with the smooth bore upgrade included. As far as frequency, I feel like I use this tower a tad bit more than the Archmage tower. The reason why is because I like to exploit the tower's ability, because of the fact that it also, when you have the max upgrades with respect to artillery, it can stun, and that's pleasing to me in many different situations. Also, in this game where there's stages where they have quite a few bends, you know how it is in original Kingdom Rush, where if you play Dark Tower down on the lower tier part of the map where the skeletal pile, the skeletons reanimate out of, you would typically put a Tesla there because it hits in a 360-degree radius. That's why I typically like to exploit this tower, because it can hit enemies on a bend and keep them in range of it. Plus, I like to exploit that fire, that furnace blast, and even the core drill. Though it's expensive, I like to exploit it to insta kill and get rid of enemies quickly. And hordes of enemies that are spread out. That's what this tower is really good at. Sometimes I feel like I like to exploit this tower. So let's see the pros and cons on it. So the pros, it can attack ground level enemies in a 360-degree radius, though I don't think that's really matters that it attacks them, because there's no spot on the bat. I don't think there's any stage where there's a strategic point where it could actually attack in a 360-degree radius, like for like Hot Crotch Plateau, where you have that one little spot on the playing field where you could put the Tesla and it hit in all areas, and basically in a whole 360-degree range. It possesses a long attack range, which is bigger than the Battle Maker. Possesses a guaranteed insta-kill capability. And another thing to mention about that is that even with the stage where the Black Surge appears, where it disables the tower, if the Black Surge happens to disable the tower and the core drill happens to activate, the core drill is sure to endure. So it's sure to target and insta-kill an enemy, even if the Black Surge were to disable it. Don't know if that's the same case with Leviathan when he disables it, but for sure with that Black Surge. Can deal a 360-degree area furnace blast attack to enemies all around it. A maxed out upgrade will burn enemies for 250 true damage over 4 seconds. So that's really pleasing, because that's enough to get rid of a lot of pestilent enemies, like say warhounds and sandhounds, and even get rid of even weakened green fins should they be weak enough to be killed. It's very effective at killing off hordes of enemies that are spread out within its range, especially when you have that furnace blast ability purchased. So that's for sure one of the pros for all the pros for the Dwarf. There could be more, but those are the ones I came up with. The cons, on the contrary, is that the attack rate pales in comparison to the Battle Maker, 3 seconds versus 1 second. Attack damage and damage per second is less than the Battle Makers. It's the most expensive tower to buy at 400. It cannot harm flying enemies, not even indirectly. So you know how it is when you have it can't launch those little the bombs that to hit ground level enemies and indirectly target flying enemies, because it's not that type of a tower. It doesn't attack like that. Both special abilities it possesses are very expensive upon initial purchase, at 400 for initial purchase for the core drill and 300 for the furnace blast. And then the core drill ability, the thing that's kind of annoying is that it always activates even if the target enemy what does that say? I can't even. Oh, dies before it gets insta kill. So basically, that wastes the insta kill ability. I'm not sure if you guys have experienced it, but maybe there's an enemy within its range that happens to die before the core drill hits it, and then it ends up wasting that core drill. So that then you have to wait another. If you max out the core drill, you have to wait another 17 seconds before it ends up activating again, which is kind of annoying, and it's because it's a loss there. But that is a con in my opinion on that. So let's see some clips, folks. Let's see some clips. So here, this is Storm Atoll, the heroic. So there was a pretty good example. Another thing to note, I think the website also inaccurate. I don't know if they this has been an update or not, but the website said that the furnace blast would not activate with the blood shell, specifically the blood shell. If it's the only enemy within its range, the furnace blast would not upgrade. But as you just saw there, the blood shell was the only only enemy within its range, so it actually activated. So I think that was the website had it wrong there, but or maybe there's something else to it. But the furnace blast happened to activate with that single blood shell there. So yeah. That's that for that. Moving right along, the Crossbow Fort is the next tower. The cost is 230. Attack damage they deal 18 to 28 with a focus, aim, and accuracy upgrade. Attack rate is average. Oh no, that shouldn't say average. That's disregard that. That should say fast. That's every 5/10 of a second. I forgot to change that. Attack radius is great. The scope is 458, and they have a steady aim, and that's with steady aim and accuracy upgraded included. The frequency, I'd say I use it pretty often. Definitely for sure. Because this tower, I like the special ability of the barrage capability that it has, where you can attack. It just has that bullet seed attack where you can get rid of enemies quickly. That's the one ability that I feel like I exploit the most, as I tend to have an aggressive approach with dealing with enemies that I like to get rid of quickly. So for sure, and not only that, the archers in this game are really dirt cheap. So it's very easy to get upgrade to a level 4 tier tower, and I tend to go with this tower more often. So that's the ability that I'm looking to exploit, and then I might exploit the Falconer upgrade ability afterwards. But for sure, that barrage ability, which is why I tend to use this tower more often than the others. Pros. Deals 36 to 56 damage per second, which basically that's since it attacks every it deals 1828 every 5/10 of a second. You just multiply by 2, you get 36 to 56. Possesses the fastest attack rate of all towers. That's true. Possesses the greatest attack range of all towers. That's true. Max out barrage ability can dish out 300 to 400 damage. Can target new enemies during this special attack should it successfully kill an enemy. So that has a 5-second cooldown. That's the big ooh-wee for me for this tower, is with that 5-second cooldown of it dishing out 300 to 400. When I mean by that, when it says when it kills an enemy, it retargets, so it's able to still stay within phase of this barrage ability. The other ability that's pleasing serves as more of a support role is the Falconer ability, where it only affects non-barrack towers and it enhances itself and other towers' attack range within its range. And this ability also provides a chance for the tower itself to deal double damage. So there's a chance that I think it's the max is I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, 15%. I think that's correct. 15% chance of it dealing double damage. Plus, if you have the maxed out twin shot ability, it's also able to shoot two projectiles. So it's a 10% chance of it doing shooting two projectiles. So that plus the tower itself, it can deal massive damage with those upgrades. The cons, however, is that the tower is really not useful without its special abilities purchased. So if you don't really have the barrage ability, which I feel like is the best for that tower, and you don't have the Falcon ability, it really kind of isn't. It's really kind of like almost not a very. It's just not useful in my opinion if you don't have that upgrade. Same thing with the Tribal Axe Dwarf. It doesn't have its abilities. It's not really a useful tower anyway. It also tends to be inaccurate during its barrage assault. Especially when it's retargeting other enemies, it tends to be inaccurate if enemies are a little spaced out, and that's due to the limited range. That the barrage ability has. It's due to the limited range that this tower does when it does that barrage ability. Whenever it switches to its targets, it can end up missing. As you'll soon see in the clip coming up, it might miss when they fire when they're switching targets. The Falconer ability can prove to be disadvantageous when paired with certain towers, as it only affects the normal attacking range of a tower. So what I mean by that is, it can be like, for instance, if let's say you have a Dwarf, let's say you're playing Dust Chateau, right, and the Dwarf is in range of this, it's within range of the Falconer ability of a Crossbow fort. But the furnace, and let's say the furnace blast ability was ready to be active, but the Dwarf could activate it with enemies not within range of the burning blaze, so therefore it would waste the blaze, the furnace blast attack. Because what I'm saying is that when you have within the Dwarf within range of that Falconer ability, its range increases, but the furnace ability does not increase along with the enhanced range of the tower, the tower's normal attacking range itself. So that means if an enemy comes in range of the Dwarf's enhanced normal attacking range, the furnace blast abilities will activate, but the enemy will be too far away from it, and it won't actually encounter that blaze on the ground. So that's what I mean when I say it can end up being a wasted furnace blast, attack at the time. So that's where it can have a drawback when you have that Crossbow fort Falconer ability within range of a certain tower. So let's see some clips to see this tower in action. So here, this is where we're playing at the Maka Urku. Here you just see, the barrage ability, that's what I like about it, just gets rid of enemies quickly. Yeah, but you see that? Yeah, you see how it ends up misfiring? It misfires because of during that retargeting phase. That's the drawback there. All right. Next tower on the list is the Assassin's Guide. They cost 230. The attack damage is 10 to 14. Their attack rate is they attack every single second. Hit points 220 with the boot camp upgrade. Hit point regeneration 48 hit points per second while idle, and that's with the Esprit de Corps upgrade included. Respawn rate is 8 seconds. They respawn every 8 seconds. The veteran squad upgrade included. Armor is low with a 20%. That's at 20%. If you didn't have if it didn't have the defense stance and veteran squad upgrade, they wouldn't have any armor. As far as usage frequency, I feel like I use them very often. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like they're just, in many cases, in many scenarios, they're just they tend to be the better choice over the Templars. Because you know, they end up dodging the attacks. They have the ability of pickpocketing. They can, you know, they can also land a potential insta kill. They just tend to be, and not only that, there's not a lot of I feel like in this game, there's not that many physical area attacking enemies like the Gorillan. I think that's the only enemy that does physical area attack. So in many cases, the assassins tend to be a very good choice for most stages when you play them, especially on the beach stages and even on the Dust Chateau stages as well. Let's see the pros and cons for it. So the pros that I came up with, it deals the highest damage per second of all barracks at 10 to 14 per second. It's the only unit in the game that is invisible while idle, which prevents them from being targeted from range enemies unless involved in melee combat. Also, another side note is that Blaze Fangs can still attack the assassins while idle, but the assassins will not receive any damage. So that's something that you could definitely exploit if the Blaze Fangs appear within their presence. They won't do any damage. So you can actually stall the Blaze Fangs while they're doing that. It's the only barrack to possess agility to dodge melee attacks. The counterattack upgrade can be improved to have them dodge 70% of melee attacks. It's more desirable against they're more, and with that ability, it makes the assassins very desirable, especially against greenfins and lichens and vampiresses and such. Respawn rate is faster than the Templars at 8 seconds versus 13 seconds. They regenerate much more hit points per second compared to the Knight Templar when idle. They're much cheaper to max out each upgrade compared to Templars. Upgraded pickpocket ability can lead to extra gold, and can the thing to note is that they can only steal a maximum of up to 30% gold of an enemy's bounty. And then their sneak attack upgrade also carries with it a small percentage insta kill capability. So that's also very nice as well. The cons with this tower is that they have much lower armor compared to the Templars and tier 2 and tier 3 barracks. They have less hit points than the Templars. They're not as reliable compared to Templars when fighting against area attacking enemies like the Gorillan, for instance. All of their skills are chance based. So the pickpocketing when maxed out is 40%. The counterattack capability is them dodging attacks when maxed out is 70%, and the maxed out sneak attack, I believe, is 60%. And the insta kill is 5% chance of them doing it. So that's one thing to keep in mind with dealing with the assassins. In some cases, they may not be as reliable as Templars for dealing with ranged enemies due to them being invisible while idle. And like you saw in the earlier clip with the Templars, you can end up stalling maybe Pukai riders or other enemies that you prefer to keep a distance away so the other towers can attack them. So in some cases, it's kind of like a catch-22. Some cases they're better. In some, it just depends on situations. Sometimes they're better to have than the Templars. Other cases, the Templars end up being a better choice. It just depends on what's going on. So let's see some clips. All right. That was that for there. That just showed a little clip of them insta-killing, dodging the melee attack of the jack-o'-lantern, and then them pickpocketing. Moving right along, the Necromancer tower is next. The cost is 300. Their attack damage is 22 to 77 with the Eldritch power upgrade. Attack rate is average they attack every single second. The attack radius is great at 436 scope with the Rune of Power upgrade. And as far as usage frequency, I use them very often. I really like this tower because of it's just what it has to offer. It does the magic damage, its potential to do physical. If you exploit having the Death Rider and then the skeletons itself, they do physical damage, plus the Pestilence can do true damage. So it's a very versatile type of tower, and I also pleased with its fast attack rate. Even though there is a high variance range attack damage, I still am pleased with this type of tower when I tend to go with it really, really often. And even in some of the wisdom tests I attempt in this game. So let's see the pros and cons on it. The pros, it has great attack range equivalent to the Archmage and possesses the fastest attack rate of all mage towers. Has potential to deal high magic damage at 22 to 77. Capable of providing a durable warrior, the Death Rider, to block and attack enemies and enhance other undead comrades, such as, let's say, the Ulrich Sand Warriors or Boneheart's Wishbone Golem Dog, and other skeletons that are within range of the Death Rider. It can enhance their attack strength and their armor. Possesses passive. It possesses the tower itself possesses the passive ability to reanimate fallen enemies within range into a skeleton knights that block the advancement of the enemy. Can summon a pestilent slime in a specific area on the battlefield that deals true damage 20 per second over a potential maximum period of 6 seconds. Also has a 12-second cooldown. And just as I mentioned already, it possesses great versatility and type attacking capabilities, being the only tower capable of dealing damage to any enemy in the game. So that means every enemy in this game can be harmed in some degree with this tower if you have all of its upgrades. No other tower I can think of can harm every single enemy in the game. And it's very reliable for crowd controlling and stalling enemies. The drawbacks and cons that I found is that it has a significantly lower magic attack damage compared to the Archmage. Definitely true. Has a wide variance of damage and can potentially dish out low magic damage because of that 22 to 77. That 22 is pretty low for the magic attacking mage towers, especially it being a level 4 tier tower. The Pestilence ability and the Summon Death Rider ability are pretty expensive at 292 and 270 bounty upon initial purchase. So that too is also kind of a con. But that's the same instance. Well, not necessarily with the critical mass for the Archmage, but it's the same instance for that Twister upgrade for the Archmage. So those, it's pretty hefty in bounty in my opinion, especially when you want to get the Death Rider or get the Pestilence ability going. It costs quite a bit if you ask me. But nonetheless, this tower is great, and I really love implementing it alongside with having other towers within its ranges. That's kind of like its strong role, if you ask me. So let's see some clips. So here's a good example. I have the Battle Maker over there. Enemies stall in range. It's using its magic attacking damage. It's using the poison damage that's harming the units out there, and I have the Death Rider to do some physical damage. So it's got a type of attacking capability that I find pleasing. All right, so that was that, and then finally the Battle Maker. The cost is 375. Attack damage 28 to 61, and that's with the improved ordnance upgrade. Attack rate is average at 1 second, though that's really fast for artillery. Attack radius is short. It's 350 scope. That's with the smoothbore upgrade. And as far as frequency, I use this tower very often. I'm very sure many of you use this tower very often because I mean, this tower is golden. It's a artillery tower, a decimating tower that you're able to move and rally, and it has a very fast attack rate. And it also slows down and stuns enemies. I mean, this tower, if you love micromanaging, this is one of those towers that if they made a teddy bear out of it, you would love it. I really, you'd probably go to sleep with it at night, But I love using this tower. It's just golden. It has everything that you would wish for a tower. Just for any tower. It's in my opinion, most people would consider it OP in this game, but it's very pleasing with all of those capabilities. So let's see the pros and cons on it. So the pros: possesses the fast attack rate of all artillery towers. It can be rallied, cannot be stopped from attacking even if it is disabled. So that means if Leviathan or a Black Surge happens to disable the tower, it still will attack any enemy within its range or whatever it's capable of doing. It'll still activate its ability of other abilities as well. It's the only artillery tower that can directly target flying enemies, but you need the Wasp missile ability purchased for that to be the case. The maxed out Wasp missiles ability launches 4 missiles which can each deal high damage and ensures it hits a target. As a 5-second cooldown ability. It has a 5-second cooldown when you have the Gnome Tinkerish upgrade included. So those rockets are for sure going to hit an enemy no matter what on the battlefield. The waste disposal upgrade effectively slows down enemies by 70% as a 7-second cooldown with the Gnome Tinkerish upgrade. The shock and awe upgrade further enhances the tower's crowd controlling capability. Is what I love about the tower is that with that potential 20% chance of it stunning and then having a fast attack rate, you can slow down enemies. If you have multiple battle makers with that ability in play, you can slow down enemies for a really high probability of slowing down enemies for a long time. And it's very effective at killing off hordes of weak enemies, especially with both upgrades purchased. The only cons is very few. The bombs it shoots has a small area of effect. So that's something to note if you compare it to a Dwarfen, a level 3 tier artillery tower. It has a much smaller, the bombs deal a much smaller area. They do a much smaller area explosion. So that's kind of important to know. The Wasp missile ability is pricey at 300, but I mean it's well worth it. And maybe there's some more cons you can come up with this tower, but it's very few in my opinion, which is why I feel like this tower is like the best. It's one of the most go-to towers for me, if you ask me, and with very little cons and drawbacks. So let's see some clips of it, folks. So this is Storm Atoll. It is possible to do this stage with one tower, and the one tower I'm using is the Battle Maker because it's just tremendously powerful. The rockets you're using, the sludge of slowing down the units, the potential 20% chance of stunning, and then just the fact that it just decimates hordes of enemies and you can rally it. It just is amazing. All right, folks. So that was it. That concludes this video. Hopefully you found it informative. Those that just wanted to do a tower analysis breakdown of the advanced towers. Maybe you might have found some more pros and some cons. Feel free to dive in the comment section and voice Give your opinions on it. But those were the towers that I tend to in that order that I tend to play with, from least frequent to most frequent. Those are the pros and cons I had for each of the advanced towers. I hope you found it informative. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. Thank you folks for watching. Ricky, aka the War Champion. Farewell.